this Sunday. At least if you're watching this video, when it goes up, it's tomorrow. Now, Easter is about more than just Easter eggs and hunting for them and grabbing delicious Easter candy. I know how much you guys love the peeps. I know they're terrible for you, but they're delicious. Easter is about celebrating what Jesus has done for us. Now, the Gospels tell this amazing story about how Jesus came and he was this example of how to live a righteous life. And he taught us about how it is that we can connect with and relate with God, and how the religious leaders at the time, they saw the connection he had with the people and how much people wanted to follow him, and they got jealous and they worked with the Roman Empire to put Jesus to death. Now, Jesus had predicted this. He had talked about how he had come to die for the sins of the people of God, and how that connects with the Old Testament story and how it had been predicted before he was ever born, and how it connects with what's written about him in the New Testament. And yet the people who were following him, they were confused. This wasn't what they were expecting. This wasn't what the king coming from God was supposed to do in their eyes. And yet Jesus was put to death. And Easter is about what happens right after that moment. Easter is about the miraculous raising from the dead of Jesus Christ. The Gospels tell us this story, each one of them from a unique perspective of how the women, they go to the tomb to tend for and care for Jesus' body. He had passed away, he was dead, his body was expected to decay, and they were coming to take care of it as they would any other family member or loved one. And they show up, and the stone that had been put there to seal off of the tomb had been moved aside. The soldiers who were put there to guard it had fled, they were gone, and the tomb was empty. And then from then on, for 40 more days, Jesus begins to show up and interact with his followers in unique ways. He teaches them more of what to expect, that what had happened should have been expected from the Old Testament, even though they weren't looking for it. He begins to prepare them for what's going to come next, for his job that he has for them to spread the word about him into the world. And he eats with them. He sits there and he lets them touch him. He gives them proof that this isn't just a ghost or a spirit, but that his human body that had been dead had been raised back to life. And there are all these amazing accounts all through Matthew, Mark, John, Luke of Jesus connecting with his followers who had missed him. And there are a lot of amazing things written in the New Testament. This had become the cornerstone, the thing that changes all of history, the thing that Christianity is built on, the thing that informs our faith. And there are some amazing things written in the Bible about how this should impact our outlook on our own lives, how it should give us hope, how it should give us clarity, how it should bring into perspective how we see our world. Last week, I encouraged you to read some of the accounts in the Gospels of Jesus' death and resurrection, getting ready for Easter. In addition to all of that, I want to share with you one passage that's been really impactful to me in John's account of Jesus' resurrection. And so we're going to open up John chapter 20, and we're going to start in verse 11 with the story of Mary Magdalene as she's come to the tomb and found it empty. The body of her friend is missing, and we get to see how she responds and how God meets her in the middle of her grief. In verse 11 it says this, "Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. They asked her, 'Woman, why are you crying?' 'They've taken away my Lord,' she said, 'and I don't know where they've put him.' At this she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she didn't realize that it was Jesus. And so she's in the middle of her grief, and these angels show up to her, and almost in every single spot in the Bible when an angel shows up, people fall down, they realize that something amazing is happening, and for whatever reason, Mary doesn't have that moment of realization to see what's going on. She's so overcome with grief that Jesus is missing, that she simply responds that my Lord is gone, his body has been moved. And then Jesus shows up, and she doesn't recognize him. In verse 15, he asked her, 'Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?' Thinking he was the gardener, she said, 'Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you put him, and I will get him.' And so Mary is still, she's fixated on this missing body. She's concerned. She's looking for Jesus. I love the question that Jesus asks her. It's the question that he may be asking many of us on a day like today of who are you looking for? Who has gone missing? And so he asks her that question, who are you looking for? And she responds, thinking that he's the gardener. Tell me where you've put him and I will get him. And then Jesus says something awesome to her. It says in verse 16, Jesus said to her, Mary. One word, her name. She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, or Rabbi, or teacher. She runs and she gives him a hug, and then he gives her some instructions and tells her to go tell the other disciples of what it is that she's seen and that he still has a job to do. And yet there's this amazing, tender moment that happens here. Mary had shown up with others, and yet she was the only one who stayed back at the tomb. And she has this moment where she's looking for the body. She's trying to figure out where Jesus has gone. It feels like he's missing in the middle of this crisis that she's in. And in that moment, God has this tender way of meeting her right then and there. I know for many of us right now, this moment that we're in, it feels like the world has been turned upside down. Some days might be better than others. Some days we might be filled with grief and sadness over things we're missing out on, and other days it might just be boredom, lots of time on our hands with nothing much to do. And yet in the middle of all of that, when life is taken out of its normal rhythm, it's easy to feel like we're missing out on God and where he is. It can feel like he's gone missing, or like we're having trouble connecting with him. And what I want to encourage you is that the same way that Jesus meets Mary in this Easter story, it's the same heart and attitude that he brings to his relationship with you. That Mary is so fixated on trying to find Jesus that she misses him right when he's standing right there. But he doesn't chastise her, he doesn't make fun of her, he doesn't point out that she's wrong. He simply calls her by her name. And so the same is true for you and I. Jesus wants to meet us. He wants us to be in relationship with him. He wants us to know where he's at when it feels like he's gone missing. He wants to be close to you. Jesus is calling your name. And so no matter who you are and where you're at right now, how you're feeling about your relationship with God, if you're feeling close to him or distant, the message of Easter is this: that God has done everything necessary to reconnect with you. And he is offering you an opportunity to walk closely with him. And the way that starts is by becoming intentional in the way that we use our time. Is using some of this season that we're in now to pour back into him. It's opening up the Bible app and picking a plan to dig into. It's deciding that we're going to go through a book of the Bible with our life group. It's making sure that we set time aside instead of assuming that time with God is going to naturally happen, or depending on the old rhythms of life, the Saturday or Sunday services, the life group meetings in person. Instead of depending on those, setting specific time aside. So I want to challenge you this week. Set some time aside. Pick some time to spend with Jesus. Decide that you're going to put some minutes away. Pick what those are ahead of time and choose to spend time with him. We want to be people who are opening up his word and opening up to him and connecting with him during this time, because we know that while normal might be far away, God is not.
Hey Revolution, happy Easter weekend. Jordan here with a couple of announcements for you. The first is Revolution Life Groups are back in session. This past Wednesday, we had our first meeting, and it was amazing to see all of you guys come together and do life through this crazy time we're living in. If you didn't get a chance to meet with your life group and you need information on where your group is meeting over Zoom, go ahead and DM us through Instagram or shoot us an email at highschool@rockypeak.org, and we'll get you the right information that you need. Second, this weekend, Rocky Peak's hosting online Easter services. If you're watching this video right as it went up, the 5:30 service is about to happen, so you'll be able to hop on and watch that live. Or you could tune in tomorrow, Easter Sunday, April 12th at 9 a.m., 11 a.m., or even 6 p.m. Watch it live with your family and enjoy what God's going to do through Michael's message. The last announcement is for you guys to continue to stay connected with us by subscribing to our YouTube channel or following us on Instagram. Instagram, we've been a lot more active. We've been posting a couple times a day throughout the week just so that we can hear from you guys and encourage you through this crazy time. We hope that you follow us on both of those platforms, and we'll see you soon, Revolution. Have a great week.